Hi, everyone. This is Marlon Weems. I'm the publisher of The Journeyman. And if you're seeing this live, you already know that because this is the first time I've done a live stream this way. This is subscribers only. So uh, if you're seeing this, you know why you're here. You already subscribed to the newsletter. And I should thank you right up front. I always appreciate uh, everyone who supports what I'm trying to do here with regard to just talking about what's going on in the country from, I guess, an angle of the intersection of politics, finance, culture to some extent, even anti-black racism, which I touch on from time to time. And the reason I'm doing this event today. My cat says hello, by the way, one of my three cats. A couple of days ago, I decided, this is one of those 4 o'clock in the morning kind of things. I started to write about just, going forward, some of the things I'm seeing on the platform on Substack, and I guess some concerns to some extent with um, the direction, at least in my opinion, things are going with regard to um, sort of celebrity, traditional mainstream media sort of invading, for lack of a better word, or certainly discovering Substack. And as a creator who's been on this platform way before notes and video and all of the functionality that we have now, um, as a small creator, I was a little bit frustrated. Let's put it that way. But I think it opened the door to a broader conversation, and I don't think this little episode here is going to be the last. And as a matter of fact, I have even before I wrote that, spoken to several other smaller creators, mostly from diverse backgrounds, be it LGBTQ, Black, Latino, whatever. And, I'm hearing a lot of the same things. So, anyway, um, I followed that up yesterday with, of course, my usual take on just our disastrous economy and so on. And then I guess yesterday evening, um, something more, a little more directly related to this conversation. And so many people responded with ideas and support, financial and non-financial. Um, I just, I'm trying to respond to everybody, and I said, you know what, I think this may be a whole lot easier, at least for my thumbs, to try to figure out or to communicate what I'm thinking. Because a lot of people, more than a few, responded, and I think maybe they thought I was thinking about quitting Substack or even my newsletter, which I'm not, um, because in a lot of ways this is therapeutic work for me. Um, we all walk around and we've got stuff on our chest where we're just mad and so for me this is an outlet to um just sort of get a lot of what I'm thinking, and it also saves my poor family a whole lot of angst because otherwise they have to listen to me complain. They still do to some degree. But anyway, I guess just in terms of some takeaways. Well, let me back up. Just some housekeeping. I really didn't write it with the um, specific. It wasn't a sales kind of thing, and that was why I didn't even put a link, because I didn't want it to be like, oh, he's just trying to get us worked up so we'll subscribe or pay or whatever. Um, but a lot of people responded in that way, and I, really appreciate it because, and I'm not, I have no shame in telling you, this is something that I would love to do full time, but I can't afford to. I mean, it's, you know, um, I'm not in the business I used to be in anymore, nor do I want to be. Um, but I'm not really retired in the true sense of the word. I don't think I really ever would want to be. Um, and this started off 5 years ago as kind of an experiment to see if anybody would even really read the stuff I was writing. And now here we are 5 years later, and it's a whole lot more of a commitment, which is great. But the more you want to turn it into something, the more expensive it is. I mean, today I was just about an hour ago, I saw something on Bloomberg. I get an email from them every day, um, talking about how the GOP is now looking at um, tapping federal workers' pension funds. Because if you're going to do a $5 trillion tax plan, you got to shake the cushions, I guess, to find the money. And so I couldn't read the whole article because I don't subscribe to Bloomberg because it's too dang expensive. So those are the kind of little frustrations that I guess spawned me writing that original post. And there are things like Bloomberg, The Atlantic, great sources of information, but they're not free, and I don't know that they should be. I mean, I think to some extent you get what you pay for. I can go to Breitbart; it's free. But and by the way, guys, this is not me. Again, it's not about it. I don't want to be disingenuous. Of course, I want more paid subscribers for all the reasons that I've said, but this is more of a conversation about the mindset I think we have to have, just given everything that's going on around us. Um, we, to some degree, have to recognize it. For example, something I thought I would never do a few months ago, I canceled my subscription to the Washington Post. I just could not really justify supporting them as long as Jeff Bezos owns that newspaper. Um, it's a little thing. They won't miss me, but that's just something that I did for me. Um, so I would like to think of what I'm doing and what I'm offering as an alternative to that. No, I don't have a big team of people, but I know how to find information. It's what I did for 30 years running a trading desk. Now, that said, um, I just in response to some of the things the feedback that I got, I'm I had like a little, so I'm born in April, and so every April I'll discount like a paid subscription. My birthday's Monday, just so y'all know. And it was going to end, on the 30th, and I just extended it to the rest, the end of May. Um, because some people were saying, boy, $50 is a lot. I get it. So 20% discount, and do with that what you will if the spirit moves you. Another thing that people said to me was, um, it would be great if I could do just sort of a one-off kind of thing, which I had a link, like one of those. Substack doesn't really give you that option, which I think if enough people complain, and I'm seeing a lot of people that have reached out to them about this because they have um, I guess whenever you get to the bestseller status, which is like that little check mark thing you see, you get included in this. Um, I think it's bi-monthly, some sort of a chat where they're fielding questions, and it's kind of like a office hour kind of thing. And a lot of people are asking for an option like that, among other things. Thank you, Dr. Marshall. I'm getting up there. So I hope I make it till Monday. Um, but yeah, so it would not surprise me to see Substack do something like that because when people are using Ko-Fi or Buy My Coffee, to sort of tip writers, that's revenue that's getting away from Substack. So I would think they would try to come up with some mechanism to deal with that. Um, so I wrote something yesterday just talking about pay. I think it's scaling the paywall. If you haven't read it, maybe check it out. And I used a couple of excerpts from the original post that I did, but I also added a few things that I thought were relevant to the conversation. Um, some articles that I had written over the last couple of years on this issue, sort of either about paywalls or for me, one of the big reasons that I do not want to paywall my content, at least my written content anyway, is just related to disinformation. And it's actually something when I do these guest lectures over at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. Um, I guess it was maybe last December. That was no, it was earlier than that because it was before the election, and that was the subject of um, just paywalled information and how what the link is, between that and myths and disinformation. And so one of the things that I added to that piece that I did yesterday was something that I had seen from the beginning of the year, and I'd been meaning to mention it, but the opportunity hadn't come up. Harvard has a this is part of it. I think it's under their School of Journalism. It's called the Lehman Journalism Lab, and every year they do this broad. Um, Not a survey, but they go to, a couple of dozen journalists from all different walks of life, different types of media, and so forth. And they sort of do what do you see for the coming year? And I saw that several months ago. And so there were a couple of, and I'm pretty sure I put a link to the whole thing in there, which you can certainly take a look at. It's free. But, um, the two pieces of the puzzle or the responses I thought were relevant to this conversation was one where one of the journalists said that what she saw coming was really the irrelevance of mainstream media. And she talked about how people are moving to platforms like this and how, for a variety of reasons, people just don't necessarily trust what used to be the traditional sources of information. And the quote that jumped out at me was when she talked about how the right has done so much better of a job of fostering folks with their particular message. And we're talking about, oh, Breitbart, but even like, and what she was talking about was folks closer to my um, level in terms of the newsletters that you see on Facebook, PragerU, and they have these influencers that they just sort of funnel money to give them a platform, and they just have really outdone us. And you could think about it in the way that you look at Air America and how the left didn't really support that. And where would that be now if we had supported it in the way that, Murdoch has built Fox News? We don't really have a liberal version of Fox News. You could say that MSNBC is maybe the closest thing, but if you get right down to it, you turn on the TV and look at MSNBC, and half the folks there are either um, sort of right leaning or used to be Republicans in one way, shape, or form, right? And that doesn't mean they're bad. I happen to like Nicole Wallace rather, uh, Morning Joe a whole lot less so, but that's kind of the closest thing that we have. But then when you get past MSNBC, we don't really have a lot of media that's built and um, supported by billionaires. And in this piece, she was saying part of the reason is that left wing billionaires are not that crazy about getting taxed, and they're not that crazy about some of the messages that come from people like AOC, Bernie Sanders, and so forth, even though they may be Democrats or Democratic leaning. So I thought that was an interesting point that sort of played into what we're talking about. And then the other quote that I used was from a different journalist, and she was talking about, she was basically advocating for paywalls. And um, I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause for a second. Dr. Lisa says that she gave up on cable TV years ago. Um, and that's interesting because I did the same thing. It wasn't necessarily for this reason. I just could not see paying almost $200 a month for um, channels that I did not watch. So I went not to Roku. I actually have a Fire Stick, which that's a whole different conversation because, of course, that's Amazon. But anyway, back to my earlier point. So the second piece that I used in this latest post was from a woman who, um, journalist that said paywalls, everybody's got to use them because what's happening, and this was something I hadn't even thought about. She was talking about how free information is just getting sort of sucked into the engine of generative AI. And we're going to get to a point, in her opinion, that everything that's free is just going to be, well, she called it slop. So, it puts you in a funny place of trying to figure out which thing is the lesser of the two evils, so to speak. um, I think Substack does a little bit in terms of protecting our content from being used to train AI. Probably not enough. I haven't really delved into it that deep. But here's where I come down. And I start the piece off talking about when I was on a trading desk. That's kind of, my frame of reference is either having grown up in the South and being able to remember Jim Crow a little bit. Um, and the other sort of angle is having worked in and around Wall Street for close to 30 years. So when I started a trading desk for a company that was Black owned, but the 49% partner was Cantor Fitzgerald, which is and at the time was the CEO was Howard Lutnick, who is now the Commerce Secretary. Now, I wasn't friends with Howard Lutnick, but my floor was literally we were in the Cantor Fitzgerald building. So my floor was I was on the third floor, and their trading floor was the fifth floor or the fourth floor, I think. Maybe the fifth. I can't remember. But anyway, uh, so I had interaction with his traders, with him on occasion. And one of the things that you run into when you're building a trading desk, it's very similar in the sense that um, I was not Goldman. I was not you name it, the biggest firms. So, we had what they call on Wall Street a boutique operation, which really means small. I think at the most, at least when I was there, we had 40 employees, which for Wall Street, that's small. Um, my trading desk, I think the most people that I managed, um, maybe it was around 8, I think. But that you used to have way more people than that. But I was building a an electronic slash algorithmic slash quantitative trading desk. And what that means is um, customers would send me sometimes all at once. This is one customer, 700, maybe 1,000 different stocks to trade simultaneously. You have to have a certain kind of infrastructure to do that. So and it's very expensive. I was paying um, at one point 30 or $40,000 a month just for my trading system, right? And that doesn't count all the access to quotes and information. So, which leads me back to this conversation. If you couldn't afford to pay for all of the bespoke information that's available to be able to manage those kinds of massive trades, you were at a disadvantage. You couldn't compete, right? And so when I was thinking about this situation, I thought of it kind of like that. Um, there's a limit to what I can do if I'm just sort of bootstrapping the effort. There's a lot of free stuff out there, but like Bloomberg or the Atlantic, if I really want to understand a particular thing, I need to be able to subscribe. And of course, I'm not giving away any secrets. Folks know there you can do a whole lot on your phone, but sometimes you really need a laptop. Um, I both of my kids are in college, and so there went my access to laptops. They need them more than I do. So, it's just these little things. So, um, where I come down on the paywall thing is this: I'm I'm not gonna put a paywall up on the stuff I write. And part of it's selfish. Part of it's, I think, I tried it a couple of years ago. I never could figure out, okay, where do I put the paywall? How much of this do I let somebody read before I say, okay, now you got to pay me to read the rest? And it just felt kind of, I didn't like it. And also, if someone stumbles onto me on Substack and they've got no idea who Marlon Weems is, how are they going to know whether I'm worth even paying if I don't let them read all my stuff? You can't really, I don't think I would make that determination just reading one article. What if they want to read something that I wrote, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago to see if I'm still saying the same thing I was saying then? You see what I mean? I don't, so I'm just not going to do that. And I'm crossing my fingers that, AI doesn't get a hold of my stuff. But I mean, that's just, I feel pretty strongly about that. And some people said to me, just in response, pardon me, folks, the allergies around the pollen is just, it's off the chain. So, um, but more than a few people said, well, maybe what you should do is you should charge for your financial stuff and maybe not, charge. It's too complicated because the way I write, I might start off talking about something financial and end up talking about, I don't know, racism or something. Because to me, a lot of it bleeds into the other. So, what I think is, for me, the objective of paywalling should not be to punish people who won't pay me as much as it should be maybe a perk for the folks who can and have. So, for example, making something like this, I made this particular live stream subscriber only. I could have made it paid subscriber only. I'm probably not going to go that far. What I might do is something like, um, after this is over, there'll be a live or recorded version of it. Maybe that's something only the paid subscribers get. You see, I mean, I think that's sort of straddling the fence a little bit. And I just feel like if people are paying, maybe there should be something that they should get that other people don't. But I don't think information is one of those things, if that makes sense. And the other thing I'm doing, and I heard this and I mentioned it earlier, a lot of people mention this. I've actually had one of those buy my coffee links in my profile. But unless you notice that little link symbol in the profile, you just don't know it's there. And I haven't really advertised it that much. Um, the last couple of days, I've been going back into some of my previous, work and adding that option. So whenever I do like a little from the archives thing where I repost something that I may have written a few years ago, then what I do is try to add that option. Just somebody reads it and it kind of they feel moved to do so. They can. It's sort of like a tip jar, is the way I look at it. Miss AJ says, let's see, hang on just a second. So yeah, and this is really, she says, I understand why people do it, and I'm assuming, Miss AJ, you mean paywalls. But at the moment, some people just don't have the money. It's sad because so much information that's accurate and trustworthy on Substack, unlike Fox, etc. Um, and it's behind a paywall. She says, I don't subscribe to many people. No way am I able to, and so this is the point right here to me. I'm not rich. And if you look at my profile, you'll see a lot of paid subscriptions. I think maybe a half a dozen. I'll tell you a secret. I pay for one of those, and it's not what you would think. Well, maybe. I pay for the it's about grants. Grants for creators, I think, is the name of it. And one of the reasons is, I have my well, it's my wife's business. I just support it. But we have this plant bus that it's a converted school bus that's been converted into a greenhouse. And I think if you follow me on notes, you've probably seen me post little videos and stuff occasionally. Um, and it's a small business. This was one of the biggest disappointments for us that Kamala Harris didn't get elected, because we were really excited about the potential of that. I think it was 25 or 50 grand for a small business. We were really, we that would have been a game changer for us. But here we are. So we typically will, every month or so, we'll find a grant opportunity from that newsletter. And then also there are grant opportunities for podcasters and people doing what I'm doing right now. So I pay for that out of my pocket. The reason that I have paid subscriptions to the other ones is because I elevate their content. So that's a thought that some of you may have. If you're on notes and you're elevating content, Substack keeps up with, if you post something from this newsletter and somebody subscribes because of it. Okay. So what that means is, let's just say I went forward with some of the ideas of paywall in live content, or paywall in, um, certain live streams. So, for example, I do most of my live streams, I'll have a guest. Maybe I'll leave those open to the public, but the one on one stuff like this, maybe that's paid subscriber only. So, if you're elevating my content, doing reposts and putting it out, and people subscribe because of that, you'd get elevated to a paid subscription level, even though you aren't actually paying any money. So to me, those are, Substack doesn't really advertise that well, because they don't get paid that way, right? But that is why, if you look at my profile, you'll see several subscriptions, or newsletters rather, that show up as me being a paid subscriber. I promise you, I'm not paying money. So those are all, and look, from the point of view of the newsletter, they're getting flow, they're getting subscribers, so it's good for them. Um, 9 times out of 10, it's meaningless to me because I just don't have time to read all the newsletters thoroughly that I would like. But um, that's just something. If you didn't know, it's certainly something I think that, to the extent that you're unable or don't want to pay, whatever, because I don't judge people, it's, I almost said it's a free country, but I don't know if we can say that anymore. uh, so, but you know what I mean? It's people do what they do for different motivations. And, um, it's not always about money to me. So it's about support. And I think if you're interested in supporting, those are different ways that you can do it, and it's meaningful. Because for me, I'm trying to get my voice out there to as many people as possible. Um, Obviously, money helps, but that's not the only thing. So let's see what other folks are saying. I'm going to have to upgrade. Another thing I've got to upgrade to is, see, if you have a laptop, there's a version of this live stream that you can actually, instead of doing it on a phone like I'm doing right now, you can do it on a laptop, but you have to have a certain amount of some kind of functionality. And I haven't taken the time to explore that fully. And my since my laptop access is limited, it's not, it hasn't been a big deal. But one of the downsides of it is it makes it difficult to see what everybody's saying. You really have to scroll, especially when somebody writes something long. But anyway, that is kind of the message that I wanted to get out there. It is I would encourage everyone who's not following me on Notes to do so, because there's a whole conversation going on there that you're not going to really find in an email. And then, the other things, I think it's a work in progress, but I just, instead of trying to write 100 different responses, especially when a lot of people are saying similar things, I thought this might be a good way to just sort of put it out there and see where it goes. One thing I didn't mention also is on Substack Notes, there's that chat functionality. That's another thing that I could potentially use. I could paywall certain things there. I'm, I'm. If you follow me on Notes, I'm an old Twitter guy, so I just like to put stuff out there and put information out there, and to the extent that I can make it where whoever is interested can access it for free. That's kind of where um, that's just my nature, I guess. Because I know, going back to my Wall Street analogy, I just know what it's like to be hobbled by not not having all the information other folks have. And so, anyway, I just wanted to kind of ease some fears. The journeyman is, when you see a newsletter from me or a post, it is not going to be paywalled, but we might do some other things down the line. So I hope this helps. And as I said, I'm actually writing another piece that gets into a much broader. It's not really about paywalls as much as it's about. Um, I would call it sort of. I'm seeing sort of a have and have not thing developing on Substack. That it's so funny. It's like, I guess it's capitalism. We just sort of have this. It always sort of veers to some folks have a whole lot, and a bunch of folks don't have much. So it looks a lot like wealth inequality. Um, and I floated, I started to write this just on my own, and I floated some ideas to just different creators, some that have been on live streams with me. And I spoke to another person yesterday that reached out after seeing my post from a few days ago. And we just been talking about maybe doing a series where we talk about, um, I just think we have to sort of reframe um, what independent journalism is. Is it legacy media folks that just don't work in legacy media anymore? Or is it folks like me that are coming at it from a whole different point of view? There's just a rich, poor kind of thing that's happening on Substack that I think we got to talk about. So, that's coming down the pike. They're probably going to be At least in the piece I'm working on, I think I'm probably going to have some contributors just put their 2 cents in, maybe quote a few folks, because it's not just me that's seeing this. Especially, I may be one of the ones just because of how long I've been on Substack. I've been able to see sort of, just different things that they do, and it's not bad inherently because it's a business. So, from their point of view, they got investors that they got to satisfy, and they've got to show a certain amount of growth and revenue and all that stuff. Um, but at the same time, I think there's a way you can do that and still uplift folks that are fledgling, that are starting out trying to build something. It's real easy to go find somebody that's already, you know, coming to you with 2 or 3 million in their audience already. I don't know. Then you just, it's sort of like I'm going to use Wall Street again. Um, what you see, and I've done this, where you're building your desk, and you got to find, I call them athletes. You got to find guys to work on your desk. So what do? You poach them from other firms. You don't want a guy that's just starting out. You want a guy who's already got a book of business that he can bring with him. And so when you see some of these big name folks suddenly on Substack, just know they're bringing an audience with them, and it is not accidental that they showed up here. They're Substack's going after those folks. There was an article in the New York Times maybe 3 weeks ago that talked about this. It's not secret, and I'm not even saying it's wrong. I'm just simply saying, as subscribers, that's maybe some information that you already know. Huh. And so Ben says that I've discovered that people are more willing to pay for journalism/nonfiction more so than they are for fiction. People seem to think that just because it's fiction, they shouldn't have to pay for it because you're not a quote unquote real writer. Otherwise, you'd already be published. That's interesting. Um, I don't write fiction, so I'm not real sure I can speak about that. I think I'm actually working on a memoir, but it's stranger than fiction. So some of the stuff that I have written, I literally have had to go back because it's stuff that maybe happened 20 or 25 years ago, and just call people that I know and say, "Man, do you remember this the same way I do?" Because it sounds crazy, but yeah, that's an interesting thought, Ben. It's not something that I've encountered, and I like fiction, so I would pay for it. I Most of the fiction I pay for is in the form of audiobooks. Uh, I I guess my feed doesn't, because of the nature of what I'm consuming, I don't see a lot of fiction on Substack just because I'm not looking for it. But that's an interesting thought. But anyway, folks, I'm gonna let conclude here. I'll remind folks, if you're interested in doing sort of a one-time support thing, I'm on Buy My Coffee. I've got my the paid subscriber aspect is discounted a little bit, but don't feel like if you can't or don't want to pay, I'm going to be mad, because I just appreciate the support. When I started this 5 years ago, I just dumped every email that I had in my contact, and for a couple of years, every time I wrote something, dozens of people would unsubscribe and send me hate emails. So I'm just happy that when I write stuff now, people either don't say anything or say something. 9 times out of 10, it's good. So I feel like this project has come a long way, and I appreciate the heck out of everybody that has supported it. And um, while there may be a few changes, I just don't think they're going to be so draconian that they're going to drive folks away or make folks feel bad that they choose not to contribute financially. That's, for me, not the objective. And I just wanted to get that out there. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys get on with your Saturday. I'm going to do the same. I sense that there is a cold beer in my future. So the rest of you have a good Saturday and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care.